Hi, so in this video we're going to talk about binary files and how to read and write from binary files, as well as a couple other tidbits about how to use them effectively. So the first thing is, remember that with our binary files that we don't actually uh, use them across different platforms. They are Java only. What's good about them though is because Java runs everywhere, these files are transferable to any place that's going to read in a Java binary file. So remember, these binary files are only for Java, and they're not for other programs. They're not for C++, for instance. They're not for C#. They're just for Java. Now, the other thing is that we're going to talk about is how they are different. Now, remember, binary files are only ones and zeros in terms of what they store. So making sure that we're storing information that is useful here is going to be a little bit more difficult than doing so with a normal text file. It's more useful to store these as general data files. They're not for text files. So this is more efficient than other options such as the normal text file. So it's more efficient, it saves time, it saves memory, it saves all kinds of things to use a binary file instead of a standard text file. That being said, they are more difficult to work with. So a binary data stream uses different types of input and output streams. So we use a object input stream, and we use an object, hope you can guess it, output stream. All right, so that's the two types of classes that we use when we're doing this, and these work with file input streams and output streams. All right, so you'll want to do a file input stream for the input. Just like we were doing with the other streams, we want to make sure that we're using that double layer of an object instantiation that we were doing. And I'll show you what that looks like. But we're not going to go over too many details about this because you're probably not really going to need these, particularly for this class. So we're just going to make sure that you know the basics so you can work with it as you need to. All right, so there's that. And when we write to things, we're going to use the write int, the write UTF. There's a lot of options here. So writing is things like write int. We have write write car. And then when we want to write strings, we're going to do write. This is the only really weird one, UTF. All right. So we have write int, write car, write UTF. These aren't the only ones we have. We have a bunch of different writing methods, including write long, write float, lots of them. All right. There's a whole list in your book if you really want to know what all of them are. The write UTF is the weird one. This one is for strings. So this one here is for strings. Let's do something here. Turn that back on. All right. So write UTF here is for strings. Please turn into a nice little box for me. It does not want to, huh? There we go. So this is for, well, let me get back to it here, for strings. And this is because we use a Unicode encoding in Java. And just keep that in mind, we use Unicode, which means that we store things as UTF, and that's what the UTF is for. And this is how we write strings with binary in Java. So this is going to turn that string into that's binary. version to write to, and it's just going to write that to a data file of whatever extension we do. So with the objects, when we want to actually write something, right, we're going to use that output stream. Let me change back. Actually, we're going to write code, so we're going to write it in yellow. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to do like a new, well, actually first, hold on. We're not going to do new first. We're going to do a object output stream. All right, and we're just going to call it out. And this is going to be inside a try-catch, but I'm going to skip over the try-catch just because I think you all understand try-catches at this point. If you don't, feel free to schedule some office hours with me, and I'll help to explain how this all works and go over this in a little bit more detail. So we'll have object output stream is equal to a new object output. Oh. Output stream. And then in here, we put that new file output stream, right? This is very similar to what we were doing before. And we're going to give it the file name of something like obj.dat. So it's object data file is the idea here. I think I actually missed a parenthesis, but we're not going to worry about that. All right, so that's essentially what that's going to look like when we instantiate it. Keep in mind that this is going to be in a try-catch. You're going to catch the appropriate exceptions, which are a little bit different than the exceptions we were talking about from before, but some of them are the same. Again, refer to your book for the exact details about the exceptions. They talk about it a little bit more. All right. But we're going to just, when we want to write something, we're just going to do out dot, just like we did before, we can do like a write int. All right, and that's, we can just, let's say we wanted to write the number 5 for whatever reason, we just wanted to write 5. That's going to convert the integer into its binary representation and write it to that file that we mentioned in the output stream. All right, if we wanted to do a string, we would just do out dot write UTF, and then we're going to give it the string. So let's say that we use that string, I like Java. Remember, I don't actually like Java that much, but we're in a Java class, so this is what we're using. All right, so we do that, and if we want it to write just like with any of our other stuff, we have to do a out.flush to do the writing. Just like we mentioned before, we have to flush out that buffer that I talked about. Right? This is the same as if we were using any other output stream. This isn't anything special. We also have to do a out.close. All right? So remember, out.flush, you only need to do that if you're not going to do close right away. Close automatically calls flush. I like to write them both out just because I think it's good practice. It helps make sure that you're actually doing that flush and you don't, forget to do it when you're done writing to your file. All right. Now, the next thing is reading, right? So let's talk about reading from the file. It's going to look very similar to what we're doing before, but still different. So we're going to talk about reading from files. All right. So reading from binary, we're going to have a lot of functions that look very similar to what we were doing with the scanner, but a little bit different. So instead of that, has next int and read next whatever, we're not going to do that. Instead, we have something where it's just, we have read int, we have read car, and read UTF. Now again, there's a whole bunch of these. For every one of the options we had in the write, we're going to have an equivalent read, okay? Now, what's important to remember about these is I actually wrote read car twice. Let's fix that. That should be a read UTF on that last one. But what's important to remember about these is you have to know the structure of the file. The file isn't going to tell you its structure. Java's not going to magically know the structure. You have to know what you're reading into the program. You have to know what the structure of the data file is. So when you read this in, you have to know if you're going to get an int, a car, or a UTF, and you need to know, how much of that you're going to be reading. It's really important. All right. And you also have to check for end of file in a weird way, because end of file isn't the same as what we're doing before. Essentially, when you're going to check by end of file by basically checking to see if you got something. It's going to be very similar to that buffered input stream, right? So you've got to do it. I'm going to see here if I can find what page of the book actually discusses this, because it is a very unique situation. Let's see here. So I'm looking, and I am too far forward in the textbook. Hold on. I do apologize. Okay, I can't find it right now, but I will post in the comments of this video or something where that page number is that talks about how you find the end of file. That is unique, all right? So make sure you know how to do that you're paying attention to how to do that, because it is very different than everything else that we've done. Binary files are a little bit more difficult to deal with. You also need to know how to do random. Oh, that looks ugly. Hold on. Let's rewrite that better, more readable. Random access with binary. Now, random access with binary is a little tricky because you have to know, basically random access is being able to go anywhere in the file, read in, write out, do whatever you want to do, and knowing what you're doing. So there are some functions such as seek, such as I think there's one called skip, that allows you to go over different parts of the file. You have to know the structure of the file though in order to do this, because again, the file doesn't tell you its structure, doesn't tell you anything. You can't just like read it in and then randomly convert it. You have to know what you're working with and what you're dealing with in order to do that work. So binaries are a little bit more tricky because they're a little bit more structured than some of the text files that we've been reading. And make sure that you're paying attention to some of these unique situations, particularly this EOF and random access. That is going to be something that I'm not going to really cover in here. You're going to want to make sure that you're covering that from the textbook. It's not super complicated, but that information is in there and should help you understand what's going on with the EOF and the random access. I will put the page numbers on this document when I export it for iLearn. So the next video we're going to talk about reading and writing objects and the serializable interface and how we can store basically objects into binary files for use later.